Start the session on AWS Cloud, the introductory course, and today's topic is IAM, Identity and Access Management. So Identity and Access Management is one of the key services, and it is a very popular and very much required, and that's where people spend a lot of time initially to set up the security features for their user accounts for their employees. So we'll spend some time on theory and also some time looking at what are the things we can configure in the console. So there'll be some hands-on and some theory today. Is Senthil, have you joined? Okay, Senthil has joined as well. Boa, do you know if Vijay is going to join? He has registered, but I don't see him.
Oh, he has registered.
Yeah.
I'll check with him.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay. So let's move on. Hope you can see my screen. So we saw what is cloud computing and the first week session. It is like one single place where things are being shared, and the cloud provider takes care of all the management, all the nuances that comes with managing the data center, servers, security, everything. And you are going to pay for what you are using, and you don't have any long-term commitment. With that, let's see what are the main components of IAM. So there are four main components, right? One is the basic user. The user accounts for, okay. We are recording it. We will share it with Vijay later.
Thanks, Saurabh.
So we will have users. Users is per user accounts, like you do in any traditional corporate setup in any company. Even before the cloud era, every user in the corporate has their own individual access, and depending on the work profile or the role they play, they have certain access. So similar thing will be set up here. So when it comes to users, we only talk about users, nothing about their permission, roles, what they can access and all. That will be dealt in the role element, right? You see the number 3 role. So that's where we will define. Roles can be developer role or admin role or deployer role, depending on what they do. And then what is group? It is just a logical grouping of users. It's collection of users. And policy is something new that we may not have seen it in our traditional IT setup. So policy is it's a document of fine-grained access definition. Which user has what kind of access? When you say what kind of access, either it is allow or deny. On what kind of resources? It can be storage, compute, or a particular bucket in the storage. So we can go to that detail, and that definition is stored in the policy. So all these questions are very important. So I request you to pay attention. User is just a collection of users. It is also otherwise called identities. Group is collection of users. You can have variety of groups, right? Based on administration, they'll be, based on the nature of work they do, they'll be assigned to administrator role or developer role. That kind of classification will be done. And role is what a person can do, right? So certain people can create some resources. Some people can read and write files into a bucket. So those definitions will be um, also some people or some machine. The role is not only applicable for people. You can also assign role to a resource being EC2. EC2 is a virtual machine, right? A virtual machine can have a role. The role is nothing but saying this virtual machine can access this particular S3 bucket. And then whatever um, the program you are building, based on that EC2 machine can read and write files into the S3 bucket. So it is assignment of the permission to the resources and identities. Identities, users, we saw that. So these are all quiz questions, so please make a note of it. Policy is a JSON document which has a clear fine-grained definition of what a person can do or cannot do on what resource. And what are the best practices, do's and don'ts kind of thing when it comes to IAM? So again, these are quiz questions for end of the class. So at the account level, you can set password policies. You can set multi-factor authentication. Anybody does not know what is multi-factor authentication? Please raise your hand. There is a way to raise your hand in the webinar. And what is a least privilege? I mean, also the IAM enables, or I would say the best practice in IAM is to start with the least privilege. So it allows us to create strong password policy. And in IAM, we can enable multi-factor authentication at the account level or at the individual user level. And another best practice is to start with least privilege. What do you mean by least privilege, right? Let's take some example. You have an S3 bucket, and in that bucket, you want a user or you want an EC2 virtual machine to read files, okay? To read the file and then serve in your web application, for example. In that, let me take another example. Uh, Read the file. It may be a CSV file or text file in the S3. And then parse that file and insert the records into database. Okay, that's what the EC2 computer is going to do. Here, you will be giving, you can give either read access or read write access to read the file from S3. And you will give write access into the database. But to start with, don't give all the access like read and write. Why unnecessarily write access? You are only going to read the file from the storage. So start with the least privilege. And then whenever it is needed, add more privileges to the user. So that's one of the best practices to start with. It is always easy to grant all the permissions to all the users and all objects, right? Things will start working. Then who is going to worry about the security? That's the reason, start with the least privilege. That's a very important thing. And multi-factor authentication is you will have your phone or some other multi-factor application, virtual application defined in your phone, which will help you to generate a dynamic random password. Then you will key in that password into your console when you log in. That becomes multi-factor authentication. And some of the key features of IAM. It is a centralized way of controlling access for your account. Say a company may have multiple accounts. Company XYZ will have one account for their production workload or production environment, and they may have one development, one staging, kind of different accounts. So each account you can configure it in a specific way. In production, you can enable multi-factor authentication, but in non-production environment, you can choose not to do that. So there are, the password strength also you can change between those different kind of accounts depending on the business critical nature of the account. And the other feature is we already saw, it allows fine-grained access control in IAM. You can map the user to resource with, there are hundreds of permissions for each and every resource type. For storage, what are the permissions, and for a compute environment, what are the permissions we can have. So you can define all those fine-grained access. And also you can integrate with corporate directory services. So in your company, you may be already using some kind of directory services. Every company has one, right? It is maybe your Exchange, or sorry, not Exchange, Microsoft Active Directory Services, right? Microsoft AD, MSAD. That's a directory services. Or it can be some kind of Unix level directory services. So you can have integration from IAM within AWS account to talk to your existing corporate directory services. The reason is you don't want to again create all those accounts, because you may have already spent a lot of effort in building your directory services, and you don't want to replicate the same effort. So you can integrate it. So when you log into your AWS, it will forward the request to your corporate directory service and get authenticated, and also it will get a token with an expiry time. So with that token and expiry time, the user will be allowed to use the AWS services for that amount of time until the token expires. And another important point is it is a global service, right? IAM is a global service. You define only once. Doesn't matter how many regions you have your resources available. You define your IAM identities in only one place. It is a default, I mean, it is a global service. You don't have to define in each region. Okay, so this is one of the global services. So these
Now,
are all
just a
quick
question.
questions. Yeah.
So when you say integration with corporate Exchange or Active Directory, if it is on a different cloud platform, like say Microsoft Azure, is that doable, like
Yeah.
integration between another cloud with AWS?
Yes, it is still doable. Yeah, nowadays most of the companies have already migrated to Office 365 or directory services in the cloud. You can still you can configure your AWS IAM service to talk to the Azure cloud and get authenticated. So it is doable whether you have on-prem data center or you are in another cloud.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also you can integrate it with other advanced security services like Okta, and there are some other third-party service providers. So it is standard based, and it can integrate with other third-party services as well. Okay, so this is one illustration of how the IAM is able to connect to your on-prem network. So imagine the user in the center is first step, this yellow arrow going towards the right, initiating console login, for example. And over there, your account is configured to integrate with the your corporate directory services. So the IAM will forward your request to your corporate directory service. This is also otherwise called single sign-on, right? SSO. You might have come across that. So your corporate authentication page will appear. You will type your username and password, and then your corporate directory service will generate a token number, unique token number, and expiry time for your ID, and sends back to the IAM service. And then based on the expiry time for that token, your user account or you will get your login session opened. Now you are working, and until the session is valid, unexpired, you can access all the resources in AWS, S3, and all the database services, whatever you are allowed. Then the authorization piece comes in. So whatever you are allowed, you are authorized to use, you can use it. So this is both authentication and authorization happening here.
Or this is Durai.
Yes, Durai.
Quickly. So that means once the time is expired, you'll be logged out. You'll be logged out completely from the from your session.
Yes.
Okay. It's not an inactivity. It's a expiry.
Yeah, the token, when the token expires, then your web page will automatically log you out. Your session is invalid. And then you again click on that console link, which will again take you to the authentication screen to your corporate service.
Is it possible to extend this session?
Once it is initiated, you cannot extend it, but you can configure your timeout limit. So next login will honor that the timeout extension, whatever you have set up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and here is one link I have taken for reference. I'll put it in the chat window. You can read it for more clarity. And next one is, let's talk about user. What is an IAM user, right? User account is per person, or it can be a headless account, right? When you say headless account, it is not for a person, but it can be for any other service related accounts. Like you have some batch program running. You don't need to identify who that person is. It will be called the service account. So you can create for both. And by default, when a user account is created, it has zero access, no access at all. and you have to define as an administrator. The administrator has to define what are the specific uh, roles that account will have, or the permissions, individual permissions have to be defined. Again, important questions for the quiz. And there are some terms which kind of confuse us. One is power user versus administrator. It sounds similar. Can somebody explain from your experience what is a power user and administrator? What's the difference?
Administrator is somebody who can make changes to the system, whereas power user is pretty much a user who is only allowed to do or use the application.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. So power user is, as the word says, it's a user, but has all the privileges to access, whereas administrator can go change the privileges for other users. Power user cannot change the privileges of other users. And one IAM user can belong to multiple groups. You can be a developer, you can be an administrator, you can be a DBA, right? You can be a web admin, whatever. And the user, depending on how the user is configured, can use the AWS resources through the console, right? console.aws.amazon.com. That's a web interface. That is a console. So they can use the console and access the resources, or they can also use the API calls. API calls is command line or programmatic, I would say, programmatic way of accessing your AWS resources. So you can configure the user which way you want him or her to access the resources, or you can say both ways they can access it.
Now, what's the use of having a default user with no access? I mean,
Yeah, so it is not a benefit. I mean, it is not a use, I would say. It is a security. It's a heightened security, tightened security. When you create a user, there is no privileges assigned by default. He can only log in, and that too if he is allowed to log in through console or use it through API. So what I'm trying to say is the administrator should grant each and every privilege the user needs. There is no assumption, when a user is created, the users will have minimum set of privileges. The default privileges is 0. So which makes sure that somebody has to grant the privilege. They should know what they are doing. There is no default privilege for a user. That's all I'm trying to establish here. Does that make sense, Ruben? Like when you create a user in a Windows computer today in our home, when you create a user, the user will have some privileges on their local file system or directory, right? And they can start some programs, some processes, which means they are given by default some minimum privileges. That is not the case here. When a user is created, it is just a user, but that user cannot do anything unless he is given the privileges to do. Only that things he can do later.
so it's not a dummy user, right? I mean, it's pretty much.
Yeah, it is a full real user account, but there is nothing comes along with that. Everything has to be defined later.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. So it's pretty much like how we want to set up a consultants on the system. You pretty much set them up, but then
Yeah,
in terms of categories, which bucket they would have access, then you just have to modify it as needed.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of similar to no shell access, right? He created a
Exactly.
Unix user with no shell access. Yeah.
Um, Regarding the administrator and power broker, these are in with reference to the IAM console, or with reference to
Okay.
OS accounts, Unix or Windows accounts. The reason I'm asking is, right, the administrator account in Windows generally, right, they have all the privileges, right? Same thing like root in Unix. I don't think that's what you're referring here as administrator. You're referring here the administrator as the IAM console user who can create other IAM console users and the OS users as well. And
Yeah.
power user is again something. A power user, I think you're talking about the role-based users within the IAM console itself, right? That is not related to operating system.
You are right. Right. This is not at the operating system level. This is at the IAM level, at the AWS account level. And these are predefined, pre-created AWS managed groups. And user can belong to a power user can belong to administrator, or you can create your own groups and assign fine-grained privileges. But as you said, this is at the AWS account level, nothing to do with the operating system level.
Okay. And also the administrator can create the accounts at the operating system level, but power user cannot create accounts at the operating system level.
No, not at the operating system level. The administrator can create other IAM users and modify other IAM users. Power user cannot. And to deal anything at the operating system level, you have to assign the user to create or to access any virtual machine, EC2 machine, and then they will have the operating system level privileges that they can control inside those EC2 machines. So whatever we do here is only at the IAM level. This does not talk about OS level, not even Windows or Unix shell level access and all. For that, we will see some example hands-on how the access can be granted later at the OS level.
And one final question: the power user can be, I can say it is equal to the role-based user on other consoles, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Power user pretty much can access all the resources like S3, like a database, right? Like storage bucket, etc.
Okay, thank you.
So an IAM user, these are two different accounts if you notice, right? Left side is development account, right side is production account. You can have a user in a development account go and access resources in a production account. They can also very well access the resource in the development account. And in addition to that, you can also grant them the cross account privileges. So in this case, it is called cross account role. The user in development on the left side is assigned a role in a production environment. This is called cross account role. And with that role, the role will say EC2 admin or database admin or the storage admin or whatever. So with that role, the user can go and access and administer or control the services in production account. So I'm trying to demonstrate here that a user in one account can be granted the privileges to control and access the services in a different account. Okay, so remember that word cross account role has to be granted.
Aru, I have a question.
Yeah.
So the account, where does it come in the hierarchy where you mentioned about user, role, group, and policy?
Okay, so I have a picture for that. User
Okay.
is the leaf level, and the user can belong to multiple groups, and user can have multiple roles. And whatever privileges are granted to that roles, the IAM roles apply are inherited by the user. And whatever groups he belongs to, he can inherit the roles assigned to the groups as well. So it is like creating a user and assigning to a group and granting some roles. That's the kind of association the user has. We will see it in the next slide.
Okay.
And IAM user can have console access. For having a console access, the user should have the user account and password. Okay. Understand the term, the user account and password for console access. And for having API access, you have a different kind of credentials. It is called access key and secret key. So it is like a key which you can configure in your config file or in your programs. You don't put your account name and password in those programs. You rather use the keys. For console, you need to have, when you type in the console, you have to type in the username and password. But in the programmatic access, you will see an access key and secret key. We will see how to assign access key and secret key in the console. So that can be used by the user in their programs. So you should know the difference between what to use when to use access key, secret key versus user account and password. This is another important concept. And then there is a root account for, there is a root user for each account, right? And that is the first user that is created for that account. And the root user, the way the root user logs in to the AWS account is slightly different than an IAM user logging into the AWS console. In the AWS console itself, it will give an option. You want to log in as a root user or IAM user. If you choose root user, it's a different inputs. And if it is for IAM user, it's a different input. The difference is that for IAM user, it will ask, what is your account number? Okay, for root user, it will not ask account number, it will ask the user ID and password. We will see that screen. But these are all important concepts that it should always stick in your mind.
So root user is the default administrator, right? Basically, using which email ID you registered
for your account. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And so these accounts are, populated to all regions. Or doesn't matter which region you are logging in, or you are creating your resources. These users are common across all the regions. These are not region specific. These are global identities. Okay, that's another important quiz question on that. Each bullet point here is a quiz question. Then we'll see the account structure. So here is in the top you have the organization, which is an account, and you can have multiple organizations under the master account. You can have a finance account, finance organizational unit, technology organizational unit, operations organizational unit and all. So the second layer, you see the boxes, those are organizational units, like your departments or something. This helps later to see which department or which organizational unit spends how much, right? And also you can control certain accesses between organizational units. So some companies will have only one organizational unit, and then they'll have other accounts. But bigger organizations will have multiple OUs. And then the user accounts are created and assigned to those organizational units. So this one is very elaborative and little complex implementation, where you have on the left side you see logging account. It will do nothing but audit logging. It will log all the activities that's happening on the AWS account to CloudWatch service for audit purpose. And there are some shared services, right? Shared services meaning it can be your own AD you have implemented inside, or you have a code repository like a Git that you have built into your AWS account, which is common across for development, production, or retail, any other departments. So some of the shared services, these are all common services that are getting deployed under the shared services organization. So this is just to give an overview of how different organizational units within an organization can be maintained, and what all you can create under each organization account or organizational units. Just a logical segregation of your company inside AWS. And we talked about users. Now let's talk about the groups. It's a collection of users. It is a shell. There is nothing the group has. It is a collection of users, that's all. And it is many-to-many concept, meaning one user can belong to multiple groups like developer, administrator, QA, DBA, etc. And one group can have many users, right? In developer group, there may be like 50 users. So it is a many-to-many relationship. And group is not an identity at all. It is just at the high level for easy administrative purpose only. You cannot use a group name inside, when you grant privileges or anything. And you can move the users across the groups. So it is meant for simplified user management. Okay. Here is how the groups and users are related. So under the account level, you have admins group, developers group, test group in this example, and you have people assigned under each group. So in this case, there is no duplication of users The users are unique. They belong to only one group. But in real scenario, you can have same user like Bob being in all three groups, or Kathy being in one or two groups. It's many to many. And Amazon identity, sorry, IAM policies. The policy, as we discussed, it is a definition of fine-grained accesses, right? It is a document. It is just a JSON document. You define the access to resource. You say this user has allow or deny permission on this particular storage unit, like S3 bucket. So that's how it is defined. Or you can say S3 dot star, which means all the buckets in the S3. And it is then attached to an account ID or a resource. So account ID is user, or it can be attached to a resource. Resources like it can be attached to a EC2 machine. So a policy is defined first and then it is attached. Only when it is attached, it takes effect. And there are some AWS created and managed policies, and you can also create your own, customer managed policies. You cannot edit an AWS managed policies. That's why you create a new policy and then you can customize it. You can add, remove privileges as you like. And it is stored in the form of a JSON document. It is also known as a policy statement. Okay, we will see that. What is this picture saying? It says there are left side there are identities like users, right side there are permissions, right? Allow, deny, on, what, resources, and all. And in the left side, coming back, the identities are users that can belong to groups and that can have multiple roles, and it can have individual credentials, right? It is separate. You don't need policy all the time, but later you can create policy. Coming back to right side, you can create policies saying which user or which group on the left side will have access to what resources, and you define it and store it in a document called statements. So this is all finally becoming part of the IAM service. And this is the another example of cross account privilege that we already saw. One simple illustration. This is, I'm pinging this link again in the chat window. You can reference later. This is a little complicated. It has multiple steps. So in this case, the user goes to from development to production IAM, getting authenticated, and then gets the session information, and with that he goes and access all the AWS resources, whatever he wants. And as he accesses all these things, also the same thing can be tracked or audited in the CloudWatch events. And if you want to notify, hey, this guy is not supposed to go on, from developer account in the some resources in the production account, it can send a notification. You can enable some kind of auditing monitoring system alert, it will send a notification alert, and it can do next level of things. In this case, it's doing, writing something into Amazon DynamoDB database, right? And there are many other things happening from there. This is a little complicated, detailed illustration of how the cross account level, from the user level as well as from service level. One service from development is calling the other service in the other account. Okay, we'll take maybe 5 minutes if at all there is any question. Otherwise, we'll go to the console and we will see the things that we saw today. Okay, I'm going to log out. This is the URL to login. Hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen where it says AWS Login Management Console?
Yes.
Okay. So aws.amazon.com/console. That is the console login page. You click on the sign into the console link. You are okay. So here, this is a sign in for IAM user, where it will ask your account ID or an alias and IAM username and the password. This is for IAM user. Remember, I told you there is a different screen for logging as a root user. So here it is. Sign in using root user account. When you go as a root user, so here you can choose between root and IAM if you want to. You use the email account, your company or personal email account, whatever you have registered. And you enter the password. Now you are logging in as the root user for your account. So if you go here to AWS logo, you will see all the services that are available that you can just start using, or you can click on the services to see the bigger set of services. So you see the things are classified as compute service, like we have been talking about EC2, Lambda, Lightsail, and then we have important things like storage, S3, EFS, and we have security services. First one is IAM, right? And there are hundreds of services. I may not even know some of those things, what they do. And let's see, where's the database?
Can you make your web screen full size?
How is it now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah, and you have database services, RDS, Dynamo, all kind of services. And okay, let's not spend much time over here. Let's go to IAM. So here we are in the dashboard for IAM. So the moment you log in, you will have a number over here, but you can change it to your custom login page. There's a customized screen. So when I say delete, it will delete my custom screen, and I can choose. It's like, your own custom website kind of link. You can give it to your users. So mine is called tamilmedia.signin.aws.amazon.com. Right? It's easy to remember. And then, okay, so here I have some users. So let me go to the left side and see how I can create users. So these are existing users. Let's create a new one. Tamil Media. Let's see. So here is where you see the access type programmatic versus management console. So if you say only programmatic, the user can never log in using this console website. And if you say only console, the user cannot access through any programmatic access. You can say both, and you can assign a password, right? Test 1, 2, 3, and you can say show password. And these are all the regular things, right? User must create a new password at next sign in. You can enable, disable. And here is where you assign the user to a group. Add user to group. There is existing group that I have created called admin, and it has administrator access policy attached to that group. So if I select to this group, it is going to get all the administrator privileges, or I can create a new group. When I create a new group, my developer group, okay. Then when you create a group, you have to give some privileges, right? So that's where these policies come in. You can choose existing policies, or you can create new policies. So for the sake of simplicity, let me see if there is any developer. Okay, so code build developer access. Okay, but I don't want to give that. I want to give DBA privilege, right? My DBA team. Let me search RDS admin or RDS full access, I think. So this means this user will be assigned to the RDS, which is like relational data services group with all full privileges. RDS data full access. This is with API calls you can. So I just create this group, and then it will take me back here, and then I'll say yes, add to this group. Next, you give a tag. Okay, group name is DBA group. For later, if you want to search on or see the billing, how much each user or each group is doing, you know, all these tags will be used later to run some reports or to differentiate one group to other, etc. And then say create user. The user is created. Now you see this is the access key ID and secret access key. These are assigned by AWS, right? I did not give this. I only gave the username and the password. Those will be used only for console access. And this is for API access. Let's read this screen. This is important. So we have created the user successfully. You can view and download user security credentials. You can also email users instructions for signing into the console. This is the last time these credentials will be available to download. This is very important, right? If you miss this screen just saying close, you can never get your access key and secret key ID. Okay, so this is randomly generated. It is not stored anywhere else. Okay, AWS does not store this anywhere else. Only the person who created this will have this access only one time. However, you can create new credentials later time. That also will be transient. Only once it will be stored, not stored, shown, and you can download it. So now you can download this CSV, or you can, you know, copy and show it, or send it as an email to your users.
Basically, if you forget, if you lose the keys, access key and secret key, then you come back to the console as a root user, then you should be able to recreate these keys.
Now let's do that. Go to that user and you see what are the policies attached to this user. And then you can go to, this is group, we know this is the tag we created. We can add one more tag, okay? What is the purpose? Purpose is to learn. Is this production? No. Okay, something that you just want to know by looking at it. And here is where you can control your security credentials again, right? Where you can create access key here. This is the old one that was downloaded. I just now downloaded it, and you can create one more set over here. And you can make it inactive, the old one. And let's see what is here. Console password enabled, never signed in, okay, but you can disable it. And here you can assign a MFA device where you can say this guy has to come through some virtual MFA device. So here, if you have a phone, it will, I can set up my, two-factor authentication. I can assign a name, and my phone will be always required to get this, the one-time password or the multi-factor authentication password to sign in later. You can practice it later on that, how the MFA is assigned. So this is another important thing, right? SSH key for AWS code commit, that is treated separately for code commit alone, right? In order to use Git commands, Git clone or Git status or whatever you are running, you need to have your own separate keys for accessing the Git. So Git is another service. Let me show you quickly what it is, right? We are talking about it. Why not see what it is? So let's go to service, and it's called code commit, right? So code commit is a code repository where you can maintain services, versions, and you can share within the team. So you can create a new repository, and you can create directory structure on that, or branches they call it, right? If anybody has worked on any version control systems, you create your own branches in it and then upload those. So this is basically a code repository, and to access that you need to have a separate SSH keys for that. All right, now let's go to groups. When you go to groups, these are the two groups we have. Let's see what is in each group. This group that we created, we granted RDS full access. RDS stands for Relational Data Services, right? So inside it has these fine-grained permissions. We just said attach one policy, but that policy has so many fine-grained accesses, and that touches these services. For example, this RDS full access also touches the Amazon EC2 service. So remember we talked about go with least privileged service. So let's create our own new policy and attach it to this group. Okay. Okay, let's before that, let's see what is in the role. So the role is to grant permission to the entities it can be users or it can be other resources. The entities, examples of entities include IAM user, or it can be an EC2 instance, for example, that can have access to other resources. So you can create one role, and that role, where you want to attach that role, right? Choose a use case. I want to use it either in EC2 or a Lambda. Anybody know what is Lambda? Lambda is serverless architecture, right? It is, for example, you want to run some program, right? That program will only maybe calculating average, for example, for simplicity's sake. Why do you want to run one EC2 machine or one full computer to run that average calculation, right? All you are doing is one simple function, mathematical function, or maybe you are reading one file and processing it and then updating another file, and that's it. Why do you want to run dedicated computer for that? So those things can be achieved by Lambda. You just drop your code and you can call that code through API, and you don't need to spend money for creating the computer. But your code will be accessed through the API calls, and you will pay based on how many number of times it was called. Amazon gives it free, like for up to million requests or so. After that, you have to pay very minimum charge. So that is called Lambda. It is nothing but a compute service like EC2, but EC2 is a VM, Lambda is serverless. Okay, so I'm saying for this EC2, I want to assign S3. Is there S3? Yeah. So I'm saying my EC2 machine should have access to S3. And I will give a name to that policy.
For the Lambda service, your code should be architecture independent, or you can say that I need so-and-so architecture, something like that. For example, Windows something, or Linux with something.
It can be written in Python or Node, the JavaScript, Node.js kind of script. And it is platform independent. And it has its own runtime environment. You can define how much memory you want to run that. So based on that, also your bill will go up and down. Okay, so in this, I'm saying, okay, I don't want to give a, okay, purpose access S3. Next, role name S3 access. Allow S3 to call AWS services on your behalf. Oh yeah, that's good. Okay, now I have created one role, this S3 access role, that actually has access to your S3. So this trust relationship is something you can set across two different accounts. Also, you can define it over here. Let's not get into that right now. So we saw the users, we saw the groups, and then we saw the the roles that we created. This role, we will attach the S3 policy, S3 full access policy, or just give read-only policy. Always start with the least privileges. So you have attached it, and so this is one way of attaching it, or you can say, I want to define my own way of policy. You say what service you want to attach. Say, let's pick up again the S3. So earlier we picked the ready-made policy that was created by AWS, and now you can say, I want to define my own policy. And in that policy, I'm saying the S3 service, and all the actions means it can do all this, but I don't want to do that. I just want to do list and read. And if there is any particular directory or something, you can define that, any specific resource or all resources, right? So if there is one bucket I want to give, I will define it over here, or I can say all the resources. So if there is any specific thing, then I have to give the ARN of that. ARN is Amazon resource name. Yeah, Amazon resource name, which says a specific resource in that AWS account. You can it is unique number, and you can enter that number, or you can say simply all the resources for the sake of simplicity. And yeah, so I have created my own policy now. Then attach policy. I can say EC2 to S3. Let me see if it is already. Sometimes it takes a while to refresh. Oh, it is already assigned. That's why it's not showing it. Okay. So for the same S3 access role, I have already granted AWS managed policy, and also attached the inline policy that we just created. So at a high level, this is how your policies are created and attached to user or roles. And then those users can execute whatever permission granted on these policies. So this is the list of all the policies that are AWS managed, but you can also filter to look for your own policies. Customer managed. Oh, it's not showing the one I just created. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not showing it, but so you can also create new policies and manage existing policies, or you can copy one policy and create a new policy and using that. And how the policy looks like inside, to see that, you click on the JSON, that will show. So there are three important things in a policy, which is called a statement, right? Effect is allow or deny. Action is read only or read write, right? That level of privilege. And resource is what resource. So since this is an administrator access, it has allow on all the resources with all the privileges. Let's take something that is a read-only kind of policy. Okay. Okay, DynamoDB read-only policy. Look at the JSON. So it says action is it's saying on all these resources, these actions describe scalable targets, or if you take any simple one, DynamoDB batch get item. If you know in DynamoDB to retrieve the data, you have to use get item or batch get item. So DynamoDB's get item is allowed in this, but there is no put item. We are overwriting the data because it is a read-only access. So it is all only about reading data, describing, listing, querying, scanning. It is all read-only access, but it doesn't have any read, write, or update kind of actions on that. So it is allowed on all the databases and tables. If you take the full access, it will have, instead of saying read, write, it will say everything star. That's why you will not be able to see the details of the difference when you look at the full access. I know it is a little beyond what we have been dealing with. It will look daunting first, but once you get into it and start creating policies and assigning to roles, you will become more accustomed to that. It is more of how frequently you use that, or how frequently you troubleshoot that, then that sticks in your mind. So for users, we saw how to assign policies for the roles. And let's see, go to the users and pick a user. And here you go add permission, or you can add inline policy. So at the user level also, you can add inline policies. So when you say inline policy, you choose what service, what kind of action, meaning read, write, and then on what resource, like database or DynamoDB or S3. And these are like additional conditions. I have not used it, but you can dig deeper and use the fine-grained access control on that. So you choose what service. Let's choose something. Is there RDS? So data services. I want to give only write permission on this, and so I'm saying all the resources in this. So it can do all kind of write activities, modifying, deleting, restoring, creating. If I say read only and take write out all resources, all resources. So it has only two actions. When we say read, it has only two, download database log file, and listing some of the resource or the tags. But if I say list, let's see, there are more privileges describing the database and cluster properties. And you can also deal with the tags, writing and removing tags and all. So I believe you get the gist of what those privileges have to do with. Okay, so I know it is not easy to remember all those things, but at a high level, I just want to summarize one more time that you have users, you set your users security at a high level. Say if it is MFA enabled or disabled, and the password strength, what kind of password policies you want to apply. You can define it has to be 6 characters long or 8 characters long. I just want to see where we define that. Okay, so I think it is under the settings over here, account settings. Under account settings, you can set password policy. How many characters minimum and what combinations of passwords, those things. If you have done any directory services administration, you can do that. And if you want to integrate with other service providers or identity providers, they call it IDP, identity providers, you can create the record based on SAML type. You are supposed to get a metadata document from the other identity provider and upload that file. Then it'll create the integration between the AWS IAM and the other directory providers. And then other things we saw, groups and users and the roles that we created, and how to define the policy between the resources and the permission action on what resources. So mainly it is the IAM contains only this set of activities that you can do. Any questions? Okay. Can we have the quiz? Let me ping you the quiz URL. Where did the quiz go? Yeah, okay, edit and send. You can see the link that I posted in the chat screen.
Yeah.
Okay, you can take that quiz. Maybe it will take 5-10 minutes.